Here's a Reggie White, SkyBox. There's Rubies, right?
Yes.
So I wish I knew more about 90s inserts. I have lots of good friends that do it. It's a very interesting market. And right here we got a really nice one of Superstar. And a couple of things I noticed on this card. I was looking for some of the Rubies that you had earlier. They tend to be pretty condition sensitive.
Absolutely.
And so the threshold for like what's considered a good grade is a lot smaller.
Do you notice that with certain sets, the grading companies kind of grade on a curve to a degree? Because I feel like I have with certain condition-sensitive sets.
So it depends on the company. I know that from my experience with National Treasures, you sometimes get a little bit of a protrusion from the patch window just due to the stitching, right? And because of that, I've noticed that Beckett is a little bit easier on those. And always with a little bit of corner damage, the Beckett can be a little bit more lenient on the thicker cards. PSA, on the other hand, tends to be a little bit more lenient with those 90s inserts. I'm sure because they have a lot of top-of-the-line experts with not turning to be a collector of 90s inserts. And like we were just looking at Jambalaya before we started recording, there's a lot of edge wear on the back, and it was very, very noticeable by the card grade of PSA 9. And that's probably because they were a little bit more lenient on that because maybe all the cards have that.
That was going to be my follow-up. Are they more lenient with stuff that's manufacturer error that they all have, as opposed to something where it's got a big scratch or a ding corner? If it's like a print line, are they more lenient with that because couldn't do anything about it? That's the way it came.
So more recently on that, if you look at the Kaboom set from, I believe it was 2020 or 2021, all of those cards have a print line at the top of the card. And both companies have been pretty hard on those. I'm pretty sure out of all the ones that I've graded personally, the highest that we've gone was a 9. And all of them have like an 8.5 or an 8 surface, and that's been the only thing that's held those cards back. And so hopefully, down the line, that becomes, a recognized print defect, and we start seeing them being a little bit more lenient on that print line, on that set specifically. Now, as for this card specifically, from the Rubies that I've seen earlier, this one looks pretty good. You got some edge wear at the bottom there. You got a little bit of edge wear at the top there, and a little bit of corner wear right there. Other than that, it looks pretty good. And, it still doesn't look as good as the Jimmy Butler, obviously, but for what the card is, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of PSA 10s and like Rubies and PMGs.
Right, and they always have the print lines. That entire pattern in general, you always get the print lines, and I'm not even sure if that's print lines or if that's the pattern itself.
Design.
And I don't think that's something that they penalize from my experience, although I've only graded like 3 of these cards in general across all the different sports, sets, etc. So on this card, if I were grading it, I think you're looking at like an 8 to an 8.5 with Beckett, that is. PSA, you might be looking at a 7 to an 8 because it might be a little bit harder on those corners, but like we saw with the Jambalaya, they could be a little bit more lenient on it, and you could be looking at up to a 9 over there.
Okay.
So.